Jesus actually came to me and quite up close to me and said, "You've had a lot of grief in your life. You've got a lot of things inside you that are messed up, and I want to heal you. I want to come inside you, and I want to heal you." And I said, "Sure, please do this." I knew I needed healing and help in many ways at that point in my life. So at this stage, something really incredible happened, and it was like he blended inside me, and I could feel his presence inside me, and he was shifting things around, and I could feel grief being dissipated, and I could feel pain being taken away. I'm talking emotional pain and things, difficult things I've been through in my life, and I could just feel the effects of that just being totally pushed aside and replaced with this beautiful, loving feelings that just filled me up.
My guest today is Dr. Colin Perry, who had a near death experience and was actually told that he was going to die in 2008 before that happened. So I'm really excited to talk to him and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Laurie. Yeah.
So I understand that you met Jesus and angels, and I'm really, really, really interested because it's not super common that that happens in NDEs, and I've listened to and watched and read about lots and lots of them. But before we get into the NDE, can you just share a little bit about what your life was like before all of this craziness ensued?
Sure. Yeah. I was born in Melbourne, Australia, which is right down the southern end of the Australian continent, in 1958, and grew up in a very good family. My parents were great. They loved me, brought me up. I was brought up Christian. I was very much just a normal, average, everyday young Australian. And as I went through my schooling, I started to pick up guitar and loved music and started to get into the whole music scene. So I was a guitarist playing a lot of blues and the psychedelic era and all the things that go along with that. So I was a teenager in the 1970s. So pretty wild time.
Yep,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah, went through that. I've had five children, and I've been a parent for a great deal of my life, and love my kids a lot. They're all grown up and adult now, but they're wonderful people and spread all over the planet, as unfortunately happens. So I have a daughter in Germany, a daughter in Sweden, and the other three are sort of scattered around Australia in various places.
And I've
But
been upset because my daughter's 5.5 hours away in a different
yeah,
state. I think somebody always has it worse. Wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, I went to visit my daughters in Europe last year, which was just beautiful. They're having children, so I've got grandchildren in Europe, which is very strange. So I can talk to them on Zoom like I'm talking with you, but it's not the same as actually being able to pick them up and hold them. But yeah, so look, yeah, I spent quite a lot of time, being a parent and bringing up kids, and I was very much into the whole music songwriting sort of world. Ran a recording studio for a while, and about the age of 30, I went and studied media at university. And went on to do a PhD, hence the doctor handle. So I did a PhD in media, and I'm currently a lecturer in media at university, but getting close to my retirement age, which I'm looking forward to, where I can just sit and play music and write books and do the things I really want to do with my life.
That sounds great.
Mm.
Okay, so you have this, I don't know if it was a voice or something very specific happened to let you know that something was going terribly wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had chest pains, and this was when I was age 49. So this is actually 16 years ago, in 2008, and I had bad chest pain and was concerned about the condition of my heart. So I went to see the doctor and had ECG tests and things, and was waiting for the results. And I was told to take it easy, but after about a week, I was feeling a bit better and thought, I might go out into my garden and do a bit of work. So started or trying to start the weed whacker, as you call them in America, trying to get that machine started. And it was being incredibly stubborn. So I was continually pulling on the cord, trying to get it going. And as I was doing this, this massive chest pain hit me, a big cramping sensation right across my chest, which really was strong and powerful. And I knew immediately I was having a heart attack. And as that happened, that's when I heard this voice, which was just very loud and very, very huge. I still don't know if it was actually audible or not, but from where I was, from what I heard, it was a massive voice that just said, "You are going to die, but I have things for you to do," which was a pretty interesting statement for me at that point in time. So I actually just had to stop and say, "What do you mean by this? If I'm going to die, how can there be things for me to do?" And this voice just said to me very clearly, "Just go inside, pack a bag, and call an ambulance." And I'm so glad I did, because I was actually on my own at that point in time. There was nobody else around. And if I hadn't have done that, I don't know what the outcome would have been. But I did. I went in and I called an ambulance, and they came out and arrived very quickly, which was a very good thing for me. Yeah,
So they arrived and you're still conscious and you're not dead yet. So what
correct.
happened next?
Well, as they came in the door, there was one very experienced paramedic and one young rookie guy, very, very young guy, on his first day as a paramedic. And so the more experienced guy stood back and let the rookie do the work on me. And they said, "Well, we're not sure what's going on. It seems like it might be a heart attack, but we're not sure. So we'll treat you with morphine and nitroglycerol, which is the usual treatment they give." Which they did, and put me onto a gurney and got me into the ambulance, and we started to head off towards the hospital. And just a couple of minutes down the road, they said, "Look, we're going to give you some more morphine and some more nitroglycerol just as precautions to reduce the load on your heart." And they did this, and very quickly I just said to them, "I'm going to pass out. I can feel myself going." And I just got very dizzy and just went into blackness. That was it. Everything, the whole world just disappeared, and I was just floating in blackness at that point in time. Now, you might think you'd be immediately panicking and very afraid, but at this point, I wasn't quite sure where I was and what was happening. And I've passed out before in my life. I know what that feels like, but this was different. This was very different. I really felt light, disembodied, literally like I was floating in water. And it was quite pleasant at first, quite a pleasant, dreamy experience. And I was just floating along in this darkness. And as I was going along, I realized, my thoughts are very clear. I am thinking very clearly. I'm very aware, which doesn't seem like when I've passed out before. Maybe I'm dead. That just occurred to me. Maybe my heart stopped. Maybe I'm dead. And this did make me a little bit afraid. So I continued to sort of float around in this darkness, but I started to get the sensation of sinking downwards. And I wasn't too happy about this, and made the mistake of sort of turning my attention downwards. And I had this sensation of this bottomless black void, like just empty, deep, dark nothingness. And I was just very afraid of it. It was something I certainly didn't want to head towards. So at this point, look, I've been a believer in Jesus all my life. So I just screamed out with everything I had, "Jesus, come and help me." And I just continued to float and continued to sink for a while. And the more afraid I became, the more I sank down. And after this had been going on for a little while, this hand just grabbed me by the wrist very firmly and said to me, "You don't want to go that way," and started to pull me upward. So I was dragged upwards by a very, very powerful being that just continued to lift me up, and felt like I was traveling extremely fast. Things were just blurring and flashing past me, and I was literally just heading straight up. I don't know if this is the tunnel everyone talks about. I'm not sure exactly what was going on, but whatever it was, I was traveling at an enormous speed. And this went on for, I guess, felt like a minute or two. I have no idea where I was going or how far I had gone. But eventually we just came to rest in this beautiful, cloudy, misty environment, which was beautifully lit. And I became aware of these beings standing around me. There would have been about 6 or so angelic beings just standing there. And as I adjusted, I began to just observe them and look at them and feel their personalities. It's a hard thing to express, but literally I could feel their thoughts. And after a while, I realized they could also feel my thoughts. And we were communicating as if we were speaking, but there was no speech. This was just a mind-to-mind communication was going on. And I've read quite a lot of NDE experiences, and that's a very common factor, that everyone actually does experience the same thing when it comes to this. So I just lay there for a while and felt what these beings were about and who they were. And they just emanated this aura of wisdom and agelessness, and they were wonderful. I really have trouble putting it into words, but they just were so wise and so ancient and so beautiful. To just be there with them, I felt so honored to just be in their presence. And I felt very small in their presence. Like, I consider myself fairly intelligent, a PhD, but these guys, these angelic beings, are at another level altogether. They're very, very strong, very calm, peaceful, beautiful beings. It's all I can describe them as. So in a few minutes, when I just sort of adjusted to where I was, I then turned my attention to the one who'd come to grab me and said, and who are you? Because he was different. These angels were about, they looked like 10 feet tall or something. They were big beings, but this was just a human form. So I just turned to him and said, and who are you? And he just said, I'm the one you call Lord. And I was, wow, there's only one person I call Lord, and that's Jesus, and that was the case all my life. So I just realized at that point who I was with and what was going on here. And he just basically said to me, you have a choice to make. He said, we've come out to meet you. I wasn't actually in heaven as such, but he said, we've come out to meet you, and you have a choice to make. Either you can come with us and stay in paradise forever, for eternity, which you can do now if you choose that, or you can choose to return to your life. And I was very taken aback by this. It was a bit difficult to be given a choice. You would think, most people would just think, yeah, of course, you go back to your life. That's what everyone does. But when you find yourself there, when you are with these beautiful, amazing beings, it's a very difficult choice, because it is so good being there. Let me just expand on that a little. When I was in their presence, it was this amazing sensation of love. I've never experienced anything like it, never have since. It was a love that is so big that you feel as if you're going to explode with it. It's just, it felt like it was centered in my chest, and it really did feel like it was just this enormous glowing sensation of love inside me that was too big for me to contain. And I was overcome by the beauty of it and just the magnificence of this love. And I realized it was emanating from Jesus and these angels, and it was just flowing into me and filling me with this amazingly beautiful sensation. So I had to think, and at this point, I had to stop and consider all the different ramifications of what it would mean if I went on and what it would mean if I went back. And I was thinking of my children. At this stage, I had a daughter in a wheelchair who she'd been hit by a car when she was 7. She was badly brain injured. I was the only parent that was around and helping look after her, although she was in a facility. I was the one who always visited her and had contact with her. So she was very reliant on me. And I also had, my youngest was 8. I had an 8 and a 12 and a 15-year-old at that point in time. So I just thought, no, I can't leave them. I can't just go and abandon my children at this point in time. And as this was happening, I started to get afraid again, because I was thinking, my goodness, I'm dead. I'm not in my body. I'm not on earth. And it was quite a shock. And I went into fear again. And the response of the angels was really interesting because they all were quite taken aback and said, no, you can't go there. You can't do that here. This is not acceptable here in this place. Fear doesn't exist here. We won't allow you to be afraid. And they came to me and they actually fixed me up. They just filled me again with this sense of love and peace and joy. It was magnificent. And I just felt the fear just dissipate and fade away. And once again, I was feeling very calm and peaceful and full of love. After this, and the angels had sort of made me feel calm again after this, Jesus actually came to me and quite up close to me and said, you've had a lot of grief in your life. You've got a lot of things inside you that are messed up. And I want to heal you. I want to come inside you and I want to heal you. And I said, sure, please do this. I knew I needed healing and help in many ways at that point in my life. So at this stage, something really incredible happened. And it was like he blended inside me and I could feel his presence inside me and he was shifting things around and I could feel grief being dissipated and I could feel pain being taken away. I'm talking emotional pain and difficult things I've been through in my life. And I could just feel the effects of that just being totally pushed aside and replaced with this beautiful, loving feelings that just filled me up. It was wonderful. It was the most magnificent sensation. And more than that, while he was joined with me, I just got a sense of who he is and what sort of awareness he has, which is mind-boggling. I just, for a few seconds, I had that sensation of what we call omniscience, which is just knowing everything. And at that point, I knew I could be aware of anything that was happening. I could be aware of what was happening to a child in Africa. I could be aware of what was happening in Antarctica. It was just this absolutely universal awareness that I felt. And I finally understood what sort of being Jesus has become, what he has ascended to, is this amazingly wise, aware God. He actually does know every thought, every instance, every event that is taking place. I know that's a little hard to comprehend from our perspective, but being there with him, I truly could feel it and truly could experience it just for those few seconds. And I've never been the same since. It's something that has totally impacted me and my whole approach to life and my whole understanding of life. That God actually knows everything about us, every single molecule, every single thought. And it's a beautiful thing when you become aware of that. Somebody's got your back, somebody's with you, and it's a great sensation. So that has certainly changed in me since then. So this went on, and he finished his work, and he withdrew from me again. And he turned to the angels and said, go and check the vessel to see if it is good. And I gathered by that he meant my body. And one of the angels flew off. I still don't know why they needed to do this. He knows everything. But he sent one of these angels off to check on my body to see what the situation was. And I saw an angel floating down and I could see off in the distance, I could see my body in the ambulance, even though I don't know where I was or how far away I was in physical terms. But this angel floated down and I could see this angel in the ambulance with me, looking at me and checking me out, basically. And the young paramedic was there looking at my body and things were going on. And while that was happening, Jesus attracted my attention and said, look, there's things I've got to talk to you about. He said, although you need to make this choice, and I had decided to go back, I had told him this. He said, although you've made this choice now, he said, there's not necessarily any guarantee you're going to just walk straight back into paradise. He said, it depends on the choices you make, the life you lead, the way you lead your life, what you believe in, what you do while you're on earth. So it really is in your hands, whether you can come back again or not. And he basically explained to me about choices and how the choices we make, the things we decide to do in our lives, do determine what happens to us when we are past life. So this was very interesting conversation, and he then showed me things and choices and things from my future that I hadn't yet seen. And the angels were actually with me, and we were all looking. It was like we were watching a screen. And this is not the life review. I'd already sort of had a sense of that. This was looking into my future and things that might happen to me and choices I needed to make. And it was very much about my family, the people I loved, the effect I would have on other people, mixed in with larger macro scale considerations like where the world's going and the sort of temptations and the sort of evil environments that you might find yourself in. And he just worked through this with me and sort of advised me and told me that I needed to stay basically hooked in and connected with him. That is the most important thing, to be hooked in and connected with him, and to be loving people is very essential, you know, and making sure you love the people in your life and look after them. That was really the core of the message he gave me. And then the angel returned and said, yes, the vessel is good, it's all okay. And he said, all right, we'll send you back at this point, which he did. So I sort of said my goodbyes and expressed my love and amazement for who they were and what was happening. And then they sent me off, and I found myself once again with that sensation of floating in water, feeling like I was just floating around. I don't know if you've seen the Lord of the Rings films and that scene where Sam Gamgee falls into the river and he's floating underwater, and there's this bright light above him, and Frodo reaches down and pulls him up out of the water. That's what it felt like. I felt like I was floating underwater, and I could see this light above me. And I swam, moved, I don't know how I did it, but I moved towards that light and then found myself, kabang, back in my body. And I took a massive, deep breath, just gasped in air. And it absolutely was not a pleasant experience coming back into my body. It was harsh. It was like hitting concrete, is the best way I can express it. Everything was so light and beautiful and spiritual and floaty where I was. To come back into the body was really oppressive. It felt definitely inferior, definitely second best. So here I was again, stuck in this fleshly body, which felt very heavy. And of course, I was still experiencing pain in my chest and the whole heart attack thing. But one thing had changed completely, was that I was no longer afraid. I had been considerably afraid while I'd been in that ambulance and having the heart attack, but no more. I just was quite calm and peaceful, even though I was in pain. I just thought, well, if God chooses to take me again, so be it. That's great. In fact, probably better, yeah, was the sort of feeling I had. So off we went to the hospital, and they tested me and came up with the fact that, yes, I had indeed had a heart attack, and they operated on me and put a stent into my heart just to open up this blockage. And the head cardiologist came to me and said, you've been a very lucky man. Most men at this age, usually when they have this sort of heart attack, they just die on the spot. That's not very often they get a second chance. So he said, you really have been blessed. And that wasn't the end of it. I was still hearing angel voices for days. They were still talking to me for days afterwards. Incredible things were happening, and they were telling me they'd healed some arteries in my heart, but not all of them. And interestingly, that head cardiologist came back to me later and said, you're a very lucky man again, Mr. Perry, because it appears like you've had a heart attack before, and some of your arteries have rerouted around the blockages and set up alternative pathways. That it's very rare, but it does happen. And He said, it looks like that's what's happened to you. Your heart has sort of remodeled itself around blockages. And I was pretty amazed because the angels had just been telling me how they'd healed some arteries. So that was pretty much the summary of what happened. I gradually recovered from that point on. It was physically a fairly hard road after having a heart attack, and the sort of medication they put you on, it knocks you around. I gradually improved, and by the time 3 to 6 months had gone by, I was pretty much back to good health again and doing okay. But some of the things that these angels told me would happen did indeed happen. And for example, they said to me, there's a person you're going to meet who's very important to you, and she is within 1 kilometer of this hospital. They told me this while I was in hospital, and I was, oh, okay. A couple of weeks later, I did in fact meet someone who lived within 1 kilometer of that hospital, and we went on to have a long relationship for about 10 years. So the things they were telling me were actually coming true. For those who are doubters of this, that to me was really strong and powerful evidence that this was genuinely angels, that these beings can genuinely see through time. They are not limited by time. They know time and space well above and beyond what we can imagine. So those sorts of things have just given me this very strong faith in this whole area of God, Jesus, the angels, and I'll never be doubting it again. It's become more of a knowledge than a faith for me. So it's been an incredible road. And it took me a while to write my book. I wrote a book called Dying to Be Alive, which is about this whole experience and the things I've learned from it and how it's affected me over the years. So Dying to Be Alive by C. Thomas Perry is available on Amazon and most of the bookstores around. And that tells the story in far more detail than I've really been able to give to you today.
Right. This is like kind of watching a movie, and every time you read the book, you're like, wow, the book was so much better because you have like
Yeah.
6 hours of details in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And like things didn't stop there. I mean, I've gone on to have a few amazing visions and things like that. Like
Well, I
it's
definitely want to get into all that, but can I ask you some
yeah,
questions about your NDE first before we go into that area?
absolutely, please do.
Okay, so I wanted to say that you tell the story so beautifully. I can tell that you're a creative person. I can tell that you're a musician and that you're a writer because of the way that you tell this story. It was just beautiful. Very visual. I felt like I was there while you were telling it. I want to ask a little bit more about the place that was almost like a holding place that you said was outside of the paradise. What did that area look like? Was it just white? Did it have was it a scenery? Was it a place?
It was, yeah, a very good question. It didn't have a landscape as
Okay.
such. Now, I was aware and I could see the glow of paradise off in the distance. I was very much aware of that, and Jesus was referring to it and gesturing towards that when he was talking about me going on to paradise. So I was outside that zone, whatever that zone is. But where I was a very cloudy but luminous, glowing environment. It was as if I was in amongst clouds. The angels were actually emitting light. It was actually coming from them. As with Jesus, there was this glowing aspect to their appearance that was lighting up the space around them, which was not of itself glowing, but they were the light in that environment. I actually believe, yes, they had come out from paradise to meet me, which doesn't happen to everyone. I know this, but it was my experience. It's just how I experienced the whole thing, and it was like he was saying, "Stop, wait, go back," which does
Yep.
happen to quite a few people.
It
Yeah,
does. It definitely does. Well, everybody I talk to has come back.
yeah, yes.
So the angels themselves. So I'm sure you're familiar with the term archangel.
Mhm.
Do you know if any of those 6 angels would have been what you would have termed archangels?
It's a really difficult question to answer because I don't have a reference point.
Okay.
Um, Whatever they were amazingly wise, ancient, amazingly powerful beings. They could well have been. I just don't know what qualifies as being an archangel as opposed to just being
Well, a name,
an
like you
angel.
heard names like Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, and they talked to you afterwards. So I just wondered if any of them had identified themselves and you knew that way.
No, to be honest,
Okay.
no. I didn't hear any names. I didn't get any sense of names, so I can't be identifying them as archangels.
Okay.
I'm very careful to stay
Yeah.
accurate to what happens because I know some people come back with NDEs and embellish,
Hmm.
but I don't want to embellish in any way. I only want to communicate exactly what I experienced.
Yeah.
They could well have been. I would not be at all surprised if
Hmm.
all of them were archangels because they were just so powerful. But I'm not really qualified to give a definite answer on that.
So you knew that they were angels, they were glowing, they were beautiful, they were wise, they were ancient. Did they have physical aspects that you would have expected angels to have, for example, wings or maybe that glow that's around, maybe that angelic glow that looks kind of like a halo? Was there anything along those lines?
There certainly was that sort of halo effect, but it wasn't just around the head; it was
It was
around
the
the
whole body.
entire body. Look, I did not see any wings.
You didn't. Okay. And
Um,
there's a lot of people that haven't.
yeah, no, there was not wings, but to explain their appearance, they how can I describe it? They looked very noble. Is the best word I can give you. Their faces were not emotionless, but uh, very fixed and very strong in just the way their faces sat. They just looked ancient and wise. It's hard to describe their appearance. Their faces were quite long and quite somber, but absolutely full of love and wisdom. They just had those characteristics written all over their being. It's very hard when you're in that environment. It's not like it is here. We judge so much by just what people look like and the expressions they might have on their face. But for these beings, there's this other level of connection, which is just very difficult to describe in words, where you're actually connected to their whole thought, their whole being, their whole spirit is connected to yours. So you can see, feel, understand them all at the same time. So it takes it into a whole different realm.
Did they have a feeling of being feminine or masculine or more androgynous?
I would say androgynous. There was not feminine characteristics. Uh, they just looked like a being like you or I. We associate that with physical characteristics, but I couldn't make out anything to identify them as either. That they just had their own identity that I wouldn't say was male or female. They're a level above something else. Something
Okay.
else altogether. Yeah,
Now, Jesus obviously male, and it's not
definitely.
every day that I get to talk to somebody who has had an actual encounter with Jesus, and I'm sure I would bet you money that this is the number one question that you're asked is, what did Jesus look like? Am I
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Everyone asks this. My standard answer is that is not the point.
I get
Okay.
it that it's not the point,
Yeah.
but everyone wants to
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. Oh, look, it's quite amazing, really, because I've obviously looked into it quite a lot with since having had this experience and looking at the images that people who've seen Jesus in NDEs or in visions have drawn, and they are very accurate. Fairly narrow Middle Eastern looking face, sort of a narrow nose. He had a beard. Um, Hair a bit longer than mine. He was wearing a white robe. He look his physical appearance was nice, but that's not what I didn't get this experience of the whole glorification and sort of the crown on his head and the things that some other people have seen. He was just this very amazing guy in a white robe with a beard. And what really mattered was not just how he looked, well, his eyes were very much felt like you were looking into infinity. He just looked like the most loving, wonderful man I've ever met anywhere. Why? Not because of how he looked, but because of what he was emanating, what he was putting out from himself into me. And that's what I remember the most from it, above his appearance.
What I think is amazing is your description of the omniscience. Say that word,
Omniscience. Yeah.
omniscience.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who have had near-death experiences, who have had encounters with God, and they've talked about tapping into that feeling of knowing every single thing that you could possibly know and how undescribable that is. Can you I don't know if you can even go into this or if there's more about this in your book, but what were there any things that you saw, that you knew, that you connected to from that perspective that you were surprised about? That you really brought back with you that was like, "Wow, I never would have thought of being able to know that."
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And I guess the thing that really stuck with me was the level of detail. And like Jesus touched on this with what he said. He said, every hair on your head is counted, not a sparrow falls, but the Father knows. And yeah, I can thoroughly 100% agree with that, because while that was taking place, I often say I would have known what was under a rock in Africa. I would have known about a bug in the Amazon forest. It was incredible, the level of detail. It was like it's all there, and he's able to just hone in on whatever he wants to hone in on, and has that knowledge and that awareness. It's like he's connected to it all. That's what really has stuck with me, just knowing that there is complete and absolute awareness of God into the earth, and what we are going through and what is happening. He's
Well,
aware of everything that takes place. Not to say everything that takes place is good, because obviously it isn't, but there's warring forces. And I feel like I should address that. When I came back into my body and back into the earth, I could really sense the presence of evil that I could not sense when I was there. Evil, just this oppressive, evil, destructive sort of force that's around in this existence, that outside of death, when I was there, that was absent. It was not present. So it's like we are definitely in a lower dimension. It's probably dimensions beneath this one, which was probably what I was experiencing when I was looking down at the darkness. But there is definitely these warring forces, and God is above and trying to lift us up, and there's destructive forces trying to pull us down. And I feel as if we're caught in the middle. And that's one thing I really did learn from this, just how much God sees, but we are beings of free choice, of free will. And that was very important in what Jesus had to say to me about the choices that
so
we would make.
can you elaborate a little bit more on what he shared with you about the free will and the choices?
It was really quite brief. He just said to me, "Look, what you choose to do, every choice you make has its effects." Was the thing he was really saying to me.
So like a ripple effect.
Yes, exactly. So that what you choose to do will affect other people and will go on into the world as an energy, as such, if you like. But it's like a chain reaction effect that you have with the choices that you make. And this is where he was saying it's so important to love people. It's so important to really put positivity into people and really support them and lift them up and look after them, to help the people in need. They're the sorts of things. I mean, the Bible is full of it. We don't need to go searching for what he says about that. He said it very plainly when he was on earth. The way you treat one of these little ones is how you treat me, was one phrase that comes to mind. Being responsible, loving, caring, and giving towards people as much as you can is really the high point of our existence. And this is what I've learned. Like the things we strive for, wealth, material goods, physical beauty, all those sorts of things, in their level of measurement, really aren't that important. What's really important is the heart. What's really important is love. What's really important is how we interact with people, and that's something I've learned a lot about. That's the priority. That's the priority, not being successful. Being
Yeah.
successful is not that important.
It's interesting, Colin, because I've talked to a lot of people who have had near-death experiences who have a life review. And that ripple effect that you speak of is what they're often shown, where they don't just experience and relive the action, but they also relive it from the vantage point of the person that they were interacting with. And they see the ripple effect beyond just that person, other people connected to them. And you said you didn't have really a life review per se. Instead, you were shown future events, which I've only encountered one or two people who have had a glimpse at things in the future. So, can we elaborate a little bit on that? So, you said that this is like a screen that you were being shown. So, was it visible to all the angels and to everyone, anybody that would have been there, or was this in your mind? How did that work?
No, it was actually like watching a movie screen through a veil. This was how it
Oh,
appeared to me.
like
And Jesus
super
was
large, like really big?
not all that big. No, no.
Okay.
Like a large screen TV, basically. Was
Okay.
I mean, that's the way it looked. And Jesus was showing them things, and he was controlling what was appearing, and he was telling them things like he said, "No, don't show him this, but he can look at this bit, and don't show him this bit, and this is what will happen if this goes on." It was really like he was just navigating through time into the future, showing my life and where things could and would go
So you
according
just
to
did the
the.
optimal thing, could and would. So it's not that these were necessarily set in stone, but from where you were at that moment, this was the possible direction it was going.
That's very much the case. Yes.
Okay.
So it was like almost like branching narratives. He was sort of saying, if you choose this way, it won't go well. If you choose that way, it'll go well. I really look, a lot of it I just can't remember the detail of, because they were things then that I had no idea what they were about.
Sorry, they
They,
wouldn't have even made sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But he was very clear on that choice factor. That was very strong. He said, how you choose in your life is all important as to whether you can come back to paradise or not. Now, I don't think he was threatening me with hell. It certainly didn't have that feeling, but he was saying you do need to choose wisely. You do need to choose with that priority of love in mind. And that's the absolutely important thing. And also underlying that, you do need to stay connected with God. Absolutely important.
So it sounds to me like if we're looking at something, intention is weighted. It has a weight to it that is more important than most people probably think about, because what we do with intention can completely change versus not having an intention at all. Like if you're intentionally mean to somebody and you know that you're doing that, you're consciously aware of it, so much different than you just cut somebody off in traffic. You didn't necessarily mean to cause somebody an issue or a problem, but it just was something that you were doing without really thinking, being on autopilot. So can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think you probably have a better understanding than most.
Sure. Yeah. Look. Very, very good question, and really right to the point of what he was trying to communicate to me. The intention is important. Look, I will also bring up the whole concept of forgiveness and mercy, because that was absolutely like pouring out of the angels and out of Jesus. Mercy was a big part. And one thing that came across to me was that they do understand, particularly Jesus, even more so than the angels, really understands the human condition, obviously, because he's been here. He understands what we go through in our lives and the sort of pressures that come on us. And there is the war of the flesh and the spirit. I'm not just talking about sexuality. I'm just talking about selfishness, the natural survival instinct to gather things for yourself, and
Mhm.
the other instinct, which is to give, to help others. And that's the sort of emphasis that he was really pushing, that It is so important that we live for others rather than we live for ourselves. Yeah, I think that was right at the core of it. But look, the other thing is, I got this strong sense that if we seek forgiveness, it's there, it's available. It's not something that is unachievable. It is something that is readily available, or as Jesus himself said, it's a free gift. We have a free gift of forgiveness just waiting for us if we ask for it. And that's a really nice, comforting thing to know. And I just think, for people who might be listening to this, so important to be in touch with God and to ask for forgiveness when you get things wrong, because he does understand. He does understand why we get things wrong. What are the circumstances that have led us to that, and why we've made those choices? Because when we get things wrong, he just wants us to get back on track. That's basically his role and what he wants to do with us.
That's beautiful. I think that that will resonate with a lot of people. Not everybody is, most people are never going to have a near death experience. And so it's why I like doing these interviews, so people can learn something from somebody like you who has experienced something very different. Um, did you actually ask Jesus anything?
Apart from who are you, it was so many things I wanted to ask him in so short
I bet you
time.
in hindsight, you're like, I should have asked that.
Should have done this, should have done that. Did I ask him anything? Look, I did. I have struggled to remember details because, like I said, it's a different form of communication. It was more about when it was, who are you? Why am I here? What's going on? Please explain to me as much as you can while I'm here. And it was really much concentrated on that thing of the choices and how we navigate time and space in our lives. That was pretty much what he was talking about. One thing that was really interesting, and this was extremely interesting, I make a point of it in the book, is time. Now, time in my experience was totally unrelated to time on earth. I spent quite some time there with Jesus and the angels. It felt like 20 minutes, half an hour, that sort of time frame, enough to have some pretty comprehensive conversations and experiences. Quite a long stretch. When I returned into my body and took that big gasp of air, and the young rookie, he was standing over me with the defibrillator pads. He was about to zap me to bring me back to life, or to try and resuscitate me. And I just opened my eyes and took a breath, and he said, "Oh, wow, you're back with us." And I just took a few breaths and said, "Whoa, where I've just been, where have I just been?" And I said, "It must have been ages. How long has it been? All these things have happened to me." And he said, "No." He gave me a quizzical look and said, "You've been out for about a minute." And it just did not compute. I could not really comprehend that until I thought about it later, and I realized, okay, two different dimensions, two different time frames. They're not linked to each other. Those guys are outside time. They're operating outside and above time. Big concept. All the sci-fi nuts watching this, you
Well,
get it. It's
Einstein, I think, nailed it.
yes,
Right?
yes, yeah.
Time doesn't exist outside of this constraint. As you were talking, I had kind of an interesting thought. You were there for 30 minutes talking to Jesus, having this conversation. I would imagine he was with infinite other people at the exact same moment, having equally deep conversations, which is just from this human perspective, mind boggling to
Yes,
understand the
yes.
power of that.
Mm. And that's that omniscience thing we've been talking about. That's what I sort of grasped the first time, because I've always wrestled with that question of how can God be here and there and there and there and there simultaneously, omnipresent, we call
Mhm.
it. Yeah, I don't have the answer as to how it happens, but I know it does,
It
and
does.
I
And
could
you're not the first
feel
person to
that it
say it.
does.
Yes.
Yeah, I could really feel that it does. I could feel it simultaneously. As he was with me, he was also seated on the throne in that heavenly place, and he was also working in the lives of people on earth, and that was all happening at the same time. He has become this most amazing being. And I mean, look, the Bible talks about how he's ascended to the throne of God, and he's become absolutely unified with God, Son of God. He's right there with him, as he always has been. But that's just a level we can't really get. Our poor little human minds don't sort of cope with that level of what's going on. But I felt it for a minute, and it's real, and it is awesome. It is absolutely awesome what's going on at that level.
That's why in spirituality, I think a lot of people refer to him as an ascended master. Um, so he told you that you had things to do, and I'm also curious, do you now think in hindsight that he was the voice you heard in the garden as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I do.
And have you
Uh,
figured out what those things to do are? It's been a few years, not that many, but it's been 16, I think you said.
yes, those things to do. All right. Well, strangely enough, here I am doing it right
I
at this
love
very
it. I knew you were
moment.
going to say that.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was very strong on telling the story, getting it out there, talking to people about it. Please, people, read my book. Please read books on this subject, because it just opens up so much. There's no end of books on NDEs. There's one guy I will really highly recommend is an author called John Burke, who's
I
put out a
actually
book.
have not. I don't know that I've heard of him. I might if I went back and looked.
Hmm. Imagine Heaven, and one he's just recently put out, which is called Imagine the God of Heaven. And it's compilations of NDEs talking about them in terms of their experiences and what it means about God, and looking into the nature of God. Wonderful books. John's a great guy. He's interviewed me, and I'm in the second of those books, Imagine the God of Heaven. But
Oh,
really interesting to read,
okay.
because it just opens up so much about what people have experienced after death,
Yeah.
and what it means, really what it means. And that's the key point, is
Thank
not
you for
just the
sharing
story
that
itself.
resource. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You also said that Jesus did this profound healing, and then you went back into your body, and you mentioned that you were no longer afraid of the fear, but you had had the depression, the sadness, all these other human emotions that sounded like they weren't necessarily serving you. So, how did you feel different from an emotional standpoint after you went back into your body?
I think the word assurance comes to mind. um, I, I'd always believed in God as a faith, a faith. I believe in God. um, Now it's become, I know there's God. It's not even a question in my mind at all. God is real. That's it. For me, I just have that assurance. That's not to say everything is perfect. It is not. I still have times of depression. I still have times of joy. I still have all the different fluctuations that are a part of the human condition. But underlying that is this knowledge, just this knowledge that, okay, he's there. He's there. God's there, just looking and aware and listening if I talk to him, and sometimes giving me hints and pointers and little directions on where I should go with my life. And that's a very valuable thing to know.
Absolutely. So the angels also were with you for many weeks while you were healing and after you were healing. Do you still connect with those angels?
Not so much on the personal level. Yes, the answer is yes, most definitely, most definitely. And this is where meditation and prayer are really powerful things. Like, I'm a Christian more so than ever, but perhaps in a slightly different way. In that I really believe in God's presence, the presence of God being right in the room with me, and there are times I can feel their presence and even see little things occasionally that perhaps I couldn't before. And I know when they're in the room, I know we're in the space, and I know when they're in me also, because there is that same feeling of love, that same feeling of this beautiful warmth, this beautiful interior warmth of love that comes when they're in the room. that
Yeah.
has not gone away. That is something that's stayed consistently with me right throughout and continues to grow. It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. I mean, that
Mm,
you're very
mm.
blessed to be able to experience that and to recognize when that happens. And I think I want everybody listening to hear that they too can call on all of these presences, but we do have free will. So I do believe you have to ask. It's not just thrust upon you. I think maybe the angels might intervene in a life and death situation, but generally, if you want to work with the angels, if you want to work with Jesus, if you want to work with God, I think you have to call on them. Would you agree?
Look, most definitely. And look, I will say, and this is true to my experience, Jesus has a very special position. And if you're going to call on someone, he's the place to go. He's just immensely powerful, immensely special, and the angels were listening to him. He was their boss man. He was telling them what to do, and they were obeying him. So in the hierarchy, he's very high up, extremely high up, and extremely connected to the one infinite God. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Hmm.
Um, you had to have been completely different after this experience. Can you explain a little bit about how different you are from the person you were before?
Okay, look. I don't think I was too bad a person, although yeah, pretty dodgy on occasions. But uh,
Aren't we
how have I
all?
changed? Yes, it's called being human.
Yes, it's called being human.
I think really what's become more prominent in me and in my life is those aspects of faith and hope and love and believing in something so much more than I did before, believing in a higher existence and that I'm part of that higher existence and that I have a destiny in that higher existence, that a destiny in heaven is really what I believe. And that's strong and powerful and important in my life, more so than it ever was. And wanting to share just the positivity of God and who he really is and how much he loves people. That's really what's become more and more strong in my life and in my heart as the years have gone by since then.
That's really amazing. I don't know if this is too personal, but can I ask you how your daughter's doing?
Okay, well, that's a sad but beautiful story. She's passed away now.
Oh, I'm
She was,
sorry, but I'm
yeah,
sorry, but
she
I
was
know you know where she went.
exactly. She was hit by a car when she was 7 years old and had profound brain injury in the brainstem, which controls physical movement. So almost all of her physical movement was gone, but she still had a very strong awareness, and she lived from age 7 to age 29 in a wheelchair, basically unable to move anything apart from her left hand, which she could do to communicate to some extent. So she had yes and no and different signs she could make with that one hand, but she couldn't speak much at all. So when she was hit by that car, she was in a coma for 3 months. We just didn't think she was going to make it. And there was a very gradual recovery to the extent that she reached. And she pretty much lived the rest of her life in care as a result of that. But I was very consistent with visiting her and she coming out to my house for a visit. Um, and then one time after my NDE, which was only basically a year before she died, I actually sat with her and told her the story. I just told her the whole story. I just felt really led to do this. And she got very, very excited. And she started to point to herself like time and time again and saying, me, 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 me. And I had to stop and I said, Rebecca, what's this? Did this same thing happen to you? And she said, yes, yes, yes. Like she was really excited to let me know this. So it appears that in her coma state, she was actually with the Lord for quite a long time. That was what I could get out of it from the amount that she could communicate. And then as she was passing, I was actually with her quite a lot in that last day or two. It was actually a time when SARS, the swine flu, came through, and that's what actually killed her, which was very sad. But as she was about to pass, I was able to just look at her and just say, Rebecca, you and I have something special. You know, we both know where you're going. We both know what's coming. And she just got this beautiful, peaceful look on her face. And she was in quite a lot of pain. But she just got this beautiful, peaceful look on her face and just sort of, pointed up. And yeah, she was able to just relax and just know that it was going to be okay. And then when she passed away, I mean, it was just a sense of release. It was a tough life for her in a wheelchair all her life, unable to communicate. But she passed beautifully, and I just I know where she is. I know exactly where she is. There's times I feel I can see her spiritually in light and in joy and in peace and in this beautiful heavenly place. And I just keep saying, Jesus, just give her a hug. Just love on her where she is. So
Oh,
that's
that's a
where my daughter
beautiful.
is.
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that. All right, you said you had a couple of mystical experiences. So can you share those with us?
Whoa, it was big, actually, very interesting. I started to have times, and this was something I had to work on and develop. It didn't come easily, despite my experience, even. I had to work on getting times where I could close in and focus entirely on God and His presence with me and just close my eyes and stay still and still my mind. One thing I learned when I was out of my body was how much the brain is just this never ending calculator that just runs, saying, what if, maybe this, and double questioning ourselves. And that the brain just does that. When I was out of my body, that stopped. I was just me. I wasn't double thinking myself. I wasn't questioning and calculating the whole time. It was just me. My thoughts were pure. And that's a big difference. So I've worked very hard at rediscovering that and slowing down all the chatter, slowing down all the chatter in my mind that everybody has and takes for granted, and just saying, no, stop. As the beautiful verse says, be still and know that I am God. And that's what I've really concentrated on, just being still and closing my eyes and then allowing God to show me and asking God to show me things. I've had some quite amazing experiences. He's shown me vistas and places that I don't even know where they are, but they were just beautiful and magnificent landscapes and forests and mountains and way above the scale that we have here. And I can only assume, and I know pretty well, that these are actually visions of the heavenly dimension that he has shown me. I had one particularly spectacular vision that lasted for a good 2 hours, where it was very interesting. He took me, I went through the gates into Jerusalem, and I could see people in cloaks praying and moving around. I could hear singing and dancing. So I followed the singing and dancing and went into the temple, and went through a whole series of experiences that were really profound. He took me into the holy place where I saw angels just singing out the presence of God. He took me into the most holy place, which I saw like the Ark of the Covenant and this glowing electrical like presence of God hovering above that. And he was just talking to me the whole time. Really incredibly profound experiences that people listening will think, oh, okay, this guy's a Fruit Loop. But it was such a real experience. As I emerged from that vision and just woke up again after about 2 hours, I was just buzzing and alive with energy, which, I'm not a young man. And I just felt so alive and so young and so inspired by just being in that presence and feeling that amazing power of God through this vision that it also really changed me quite a lot. That's also written in my book, later in the
Wow.
book. These things are available to us if we make time and intention for them. I think it's really a case of prayer plus prayer to the next level, which is just allowing, allowing God to form visions inside your awareness and in your spirit, and realizing that your spirit is a very important, in fact, the most important part of you. we tend to think of our mind as being preeminent. It is not. Our spirit is the preeminent part of our being. And allowing God to work with your spirit, I think that's where you get these incredibly rich experiences of God. And I would encourage people to work in that direction.
Okay, excellent. So you've mentioned your book, but I know that you're also a musician. So don't you have some of your work on Spotify?
I do have a few songs up on Spotify, yes, just
So
Colin
were they
Perry.
inspired by what you experienced in the heavenly realm, or are they something totally different?
Look, I work as largely as a blues musician, so it's not what you would normally think of as heavenly music.
Okay, but maybe
But
for you.
yeah, yeah. But look, embedded in the lyrics of my songs is very much about the presence of God. Not speaking about it in direct terms, perhaps metaphorically, just talking about what God is, the things He does in my life. So I've got a few songs, older ones, up on Spotify. I've also got a lot up on SoundCloud. If anyone's
Okay.
familiar with SoundCloud, I've got a whole heap. I've got about 50 songs on SoundCloud. So it's some of it's psychedelic rock, some of it's blues, but yeah, some of it's more spiritual. There's a whole range of different things there. Mm.
Wow. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Okay. Probably, I think the best way is via email. So I
Okay.
have an email which is
I'll
C
Yep.
Thomas Perry author, C Thomas Perry author, all one word at gmail.com. And
And
that's
I'll put all this in the show notes so people can see
yeah,
it.
yeah, sure, sure. I'd be only too happy for you to do that. That's the best way, I think, to be in touch with me. Yeah, that way I can literally respond one on one, which I like doing. I enjoy having some
Oh, that's
conversations.
nice. That's a
Hmm.
lot of work. I know that's a lot of work because I'm sure
Yeah,
that people reach out quite a bit.
yeah, and look, sometimes it can take me a while to respond, but I do try to respond to all the emails that come in. Yeah,
That's great. So besides the book and your music, do you have anything else that you're working on that you want us to know about?
they're probably the most important things. Apart from that, it's just we're basically lecturing at university, and that's just the work I do.
Oh,
But yeah, the things that really mean the most to me are definitely the book, the experience, and there's a lot of interviews like this up online on my YouTube channel. So see Thomas Perry YouTube channel. You'll see there's quite a lot of things you can look at if you're interested in finding out more.
that's wonderful. I am so grateful to have met you. Thank you so much. I love your energy and I love the way you told your story and thank you for all of the positive messages and for what you're doing in the world to help raise the energy of the collective consciousness. It's important work.
Thank you, Laurie. It is very important work. Thank you so much.
And thank you everybody so much for watching.